water was rising, creeping past my ankles, then up to my knees. I couldn't move. My hands gripped the edge of the desk as I tried to make sense of the swirling images on the screen, the flickering ads, the distorted faces. They weren't just pictures anymore. They were alive, breathing, and they knew me. My reflection in the screen stared back, a pale ghost of myself, submerged in an inky black sea. The room shuddered with each ripple of water as it rose higher, threatening to pull me under. I should have never clicked. I should have never looked. But now it's too late. The algorithm has already consumed me, and I have no one to blame but myself. I was always online. It wasn't unusual. I'm a freelance graphic designer. Social media was where I found work, inspiration, everything. Hours were spent browsing art forums, networking, scrolling endlessly through targeted ads. You know the kind. The ones that follow you from site to site, whispering the last thing you Googled back at you. Harmless, right? Just part of the internet's fabric. It started with one ad. It popped up on the side of my screen late one night while I was working on a client's logo. I remember the exact image. A woman, submerged in water, staring straight at me. The text underneath read, "Remember the water?" I brushed it off. Weird ad, I thought, probably for some new horror movie or a campaign I didn't care about. I clicked the little X to close it, but it stuck in my mind for a while. I had no idea why. Later that night, as I sat in my dimly lit apartment, I started seeing the ad everywhere. On Facebook, YouTube, random blogs. Remember the water. Every time the image grew more intense. First the woman, then bodies floating just beneath the surface. The last one, right before I went to bed, was different. The faces weren't just anonymous anymore. They were familiar. People I knew. A chill ran down my spine as I closed my laptop and headed to bed, trying to shake off the creeping feeling that something was watching me. The next morning, I woke to the sound of water. The tap in the bathroom was running, even though I hadn't used it. I turned it off, annoyed, chalking it up to a leaky faucet. But the water kept coming back, slow drips echoing through the apartment, small pools forming in the corners of my bathroom, the kitchen, then the living room. I spent the next few days drowning in work, ignoring the growing discomfort gnawing at the back of my mind. But the ads kept appearing, more frequent now, more invasive. And they weren't just on websites anymore. They were in my email, in apps I hadn't opened in months. Each time the tagline would change slightly, pulling at some long-buried memory. You never forgot the fear, did you? Or it's still inside you. The faces in the water were growing clearer too. Faces I hadn't thought of in years. It was on the third day, while scrolling mindlessly through Facebook, that I saw an ad that made my stomach drop. It's always been your fear. HIV. You can't outrun it. That's when it hit me. The nightmare I'd buried for so long. My childhood fear, the thing that had haunted me since I was a kid. I had grown up terrified of contracting HIV, petrified of the thought that one small mistake would ruin my life. It was irrational, sure, but it had stayed with me, a silent passenger in my mind. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing. How did the algorithm know that? I stopped going online as much after that. The ads were getting worse, more personal, more invasive. But no matter what I did, they wouldn't stop. I would sit in my apartment, hearing the water dripping endlessly, feeling like it was always right at my heels. I couldn't explain it, but something in the air felt thick, heavy, as though the walls themselves were closing in on me. The faces in the ads began to haunt my dreams. I would wake up gasping for breath, feeling the phantom sensation of water filling my lungs. One night, after yet another sleepless bout, I noticed something odd. My mouse was moving on its own. Slowly, methodically, it clicked through my browser, opening up a series of images. Ads I'd never seen before. Submerged bodies, cryptic warnings, red letters bleeding across the screen. The water will rise. You can't escape it. I tried to shut the computer down, but it wouldn't respond. The screen flickered wildly, showing me fragments of my life, things I hadn't shared, things I hadn't even thought about in years. And then, out of nowhere, an image of me appeared, standing in a flooded room, ankle deep in dark water. I looked down, and there it was, a thin layer of water seeping through my apartment floor. In desperation, I searched through everything: the dark web, conspiracy sites, forums about hacking, algorithms, anything that could explain what was happening to me. That's when I stumbled upon a thread about personalized ads, about how they tap into our subconscious fears and desires, tailoring experiences to keep us glued to the screen. But this was different. The more I dug, the more I uncovered something darker. Something about a forgotten incident from years ago, buried in my childhood. I was 10 years old. It was the summer of '98, and I had fallen into a pool at a birthday party. I remember gasping for air, the panic setting in, the water closing over me. I was pulled out before anything could happen, but the fear never left me. And somewhere in that tangled mess of memory, there was another face, another boy. He had been there too, but I had forgotten him. Until now, his face was in the ads, drowning just like me. The water had risen up to my knees now, the furniture in my apartment floating lazily around me. I was shaking, not from the cold, but from the truth that was slowly unraveling before me. I had helped create this. All my clicks, all my engagement with the ads, they weren't just feeding the algorithm, they were feeding him. That boy, that forgotten memory, the one who had drowned that summer when I didn't. He had been there all along, waiting for me to remember, waiting for me to see. The final ad appeared on my screen, filling it completely. Everything leads back to this moment. You know what you've done. I couldn't breathe. The water was up to my chest now, rising faster than before. My lungs burned, my head spun. The computer screen flickered one last time, and then the lights went out. I don't know how long I've been here, floating in the dark. I can hear the faint hum of the computer, the occasional flicker of the screen. The water is all around me now, endless, suffocating. The ads were right. I couldn't outrun it. I couldn't escape the past. And now I'm drowning in it.
I never noticed how quiet it had gotten, not until the silence started to drown me. At first, it was just a dull hum, something I could ignore if I focused hard enough on my screen, my phone, my games. But then the silence started to grow teeth, biting into the edges of my reality, gnawing at my thoughts. Now, every corner of my life is wrapped in that suffocating stillness. I can't escape it. I've tried. God, I've tried. But I can't hear their voices anymore, because I've become the silence. It was 3 a.m. when I first saw it. My computer screen flickered, just a slight stutter, and the image appeared. An empty street. It wasn't like one of those stock photos or the generic ads you see every day. This felt different. There was something haunting about it, as if the silence of that deserted street had bled through the screen into my room. The sky was a dirty shade of grey, and the buildings loomed like forgotten tombstones. There were no cars, no people, not even a hint of life. Just emptiness. I clicked out of the ad, my fingers trembling. Probably just some weird algorithm glitch. I should have gone to bed, but I couldn't shake the image from my mind. That street felt too familiar, like I had walked down it 1,000 times in a dream. I refreshed my browser, my eyes scanning the screen for anything to distract me. But then, another ad popped up. This time, it wasn't a street. It was an abandoned house, its windows shattered, the door slightly ajar, as if someone or something had just left in a hurry. My chest tightened. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the screen. The house reminded me of the vacation home my family used to visit when I was a kid. We hadn't been there in years, but the memory rushed back with a sharp clarity that made my skin crawl. The ad had no text, no flashy slogans trying to sell me something. It was just that house, frozen in time, waiting for me. I shut the computer off, heart pounding as the quietness settled around me like a blanket I couldn't throw off. The next morning, sunlight streamed in through my blinds, and the world seemed normal. I made myself some coffee, ignoring the strange sense of unease lingering in the back of my mind. I scrolled through my emails, a mundane list of spam, coursework, and a couple of memes from my friend Nora. The usual. I felt almost relieved until I checked my messages. 3 unread notifications, all from Nora. Nora, you up? 2:35 a.m. Nora, you awake? It's creepy AF, dude. You gotta see this. 2:50 a.m. Nora, I got this ad. Looks like your old vacay house, no joke. 3:01 a.m. My breath caught in my throat. I reread the last message, staring at the words like they might morph into something more comprehensible. My old vacation house. How the hell did she know about that? I hadn't mentioned it in years, not to anyone. I clicked on her message, expecting an image attachment or a screenshot, but nothing was there. Just the words hanging in the air, heavy with dread. I called her. No response. Another call, voicemail. I stared at my phone, my pulse quickening. Something was wrong. I tossed my phone aside and tried to shake off the paranoia creeping into my thoughts. It was a coincidence. It had to be. Maybe the algorithm was reading more into our conversations than I realized. It's creepy, sure, but nothing sinister. I kept telling myself that as the day went on. I buried myself in schoolwork, trying to forget the ads. But when I opened my laptop again, I saw it. Another ad. This one didn't show an empty street or an abandoned house. It was a picture of my dorm room from the exact angle I was sitting in. I froze. How? How could they have a photo like that? I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding in my chest, but the paranoia was creeping in fast now. I could almost hear whispers under the silence, feel eyes on me, watching, always watching. By the time the weekend came, the ads were constant. No matter where I went, my laptop, my phone, even the TV in the common area, they were there. Different images now. Not just empty spaces, but snapshots of my life. My desk cluttered with notebooks and coffee mugs. My reflection caught mid-yawn in the library mirror. And always, always the silence. I tried contacting my friends again. Nora, Sam, even my family. Nothing. My texts went unanswered. The few calls I made all went straight to voicemail. The once busy group chats had gone silent. My inbox, usually overflowing with memes, news, and random updates, had grown eerily quiet. A sharp knock on my door startled me one evening. I rushed to answer, hoping it was Nora, Sam, or anyone who could tell me I wasn't going crazy. But when I opened the door, there was no one. Just an empty hallway stretching into shadows. My heart raced as I stepped outside, glancing both ways down the corridor. No one. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out with trembling fingers. A new notification. Another ad. This time, it was an abandoned vacation home. My vacation home. The one my family hadn't visited in years. I clicked on the ad, my stomach twisting in knots. The image filled my screen, and I nearly dropped my phone. The door was open, the lights were on, the table was set for dinner, but no one was there. I stopped going to classes. I stopped trying to reach out to anyone. There was no point. I was alone now, more alone than I had ever been in my life. The world outside my window felt distant, like a place I didn't belong anymore. Every day was the same. Ads filled my screens, each one more haunting than the last. Empty rooms, desolate streets, lonely figures standing in the distance, always just out of reach. And the silence. God, the silence. It was everywhere. In the air, in my ears, in my thoughts. No matter how much noise I tried to make, the silence swallowed it whole. I tried to fight back. I smashed my laptop, threw my phone against the wall, unplugged the TV. But the ads kept coming. They weren't just on my screens anymore. They were in my dreams, in my mind. Everywhere I looked, I saw those empty places, those silent streets. I couldn't escape them. The worst part was the growing certainty that this wasn't just some glitch or twisted marketing campaign. This was something deeper, something darker. I wasn't just being haunted, I was being erased. One night, I received another email. The sender's address was an incomprehensible jumble of letters and numbers, but the subject line was chillingly clear. You're next. My stomach dropped as I opened it. There was no text, no explanation, just a single photo of me, sitting in my chair in front of my shattered laptop, staring blankly at the broken screen. The knock on the door came again. This time, I didn't answer it. The ads were inescapable now, worming their way into every corner of my reality. I couldn't walk down the street without feeling like I was in one of them, just another abandoned figure in a world that had forgotten me. I kept my curtains drawn, my doors locked, but I couldn't hide forever. One night, I dreamed again. I was back in the city from my previous dreams, wandering through the silent streets. But this time, something was different. I wasn't alone. I saw movement, shadows slipping between the buildings, figures watching from the windows. My pulse quickened as I walked faster, my footsteps echoing off the cracked pavement. The silence seemed to close in around me, pressing against my ears until I could barely hear my own breathing. And then I saw it. In the distance, standing in the middle of the street, was a figure. At first, I thought it was just another empty shell, another victim of the silence. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't a stranger. It was me, a twisted, hollow version of myself, staring back at me with empty eyes. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was trapped, rooted to the spot as the figure slowly approached. Its face twisted into a grotesque smile, and I felt the silence closing in around me, crushing me from all sides. I woke up screaming. I couldn't escape it. The ads, the silence, the isolation, they had all become a part of me now. I had been trying to stop the monster, to fight back against the emptiness, but I had failed. The truth was staring me in the face, and I could no longer deny it. I was the monster. I had become the silence. There was no one left to save me, because there was no one left at all. I was alone in this world, trapped in a loop of endless emptiness, wandering through deserted streets and abandoned homes, forever searching for a way out. But there was no way out, and there never would be. The ads still come. They flash across empty screens, flicker through the cracks in the silence. But they're not for me anymore. They're for you. And soon, you'll hear the knock at your door too.
The flicker of the screen cast an eerie glow in my dimly lit apartment, illuminating the chaos of my scattered thoughts. I had just finished my recovery from a viral illness, one that felt like it had clawed its way through every fiber of my being, and yet here I was, shackled by a new, insidious fear. It started with an innocuous scroll through my social media feed, an act I'd thought would bring comfort and distraction. Instead, a grotesque ad materialized before me, its imagery striking and unforgettable. A face, or what used to be one, twisted in agony, skin rotting away like a forgotten corpse. I recoiled, my heart racing, convinced that my mind was still playing tricks on me. But as the ads continued to infiltrate my feed, their grotesque and graphic content became impossible to ignore. These weren't just digital banners, they were warnings, harbingers of a dark truth that would soon engulf me. I watched, helpless, as the images morphed and twisted, exposing my deepest fear. That my body was failing me once again. Each day brought a new wave of horror, until I could no longer differentiate between reality and the morbid fantasies on my screen. This wasn't just an illness anymore. It was a living nightmare that seeped into every corner of my existence, manifesting like a curse I couldn't escape. I live alone in a crumbling apartment on the edge of Manhattan's Lower East Side. The walls are thin, peeling paint exposes the raw, decaying wood beneath, and the once vibrant colors of the place have faded to a sickly hue. Dust dances in the dim light, filtering through the cracked windows, and the faint sounds of the city outside serve only to amplify my solitude. As I recovered from my illness, the outside world felt more threatening than ever, filled with unseen dangers lurking just beyond my reach. My name is Natalie Roy. I'm 32 and work as a freelance writer, but lately I've become more of a hermit than a professional. My once bustling social media pages are now filled with chilling posts that tug at the frayed edges of my sanity. The first ad I saw was easy to dismiss, a fleeting image that I quickly scrolled past. But then, the next day, another appeared. This time more vivid, depicting a decomposing hand, fingers curled grotesquely. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the onset of panic. Surely this was just an algorithm gone haywire, a twisted prank meant to provoke discomfort. But it didn't stop there. Each subsequent day brought worse horrors, emaciated bodies draped in hospital gowns, their sunken eyes staring straight through me, and captions that read, "You're next." The fact that I had just battled a virus made every image all the more piercing, each ad a reminder of my frailty. Just block them, I told myself, but blocking wasn't enough. It was like trying to block the darkness creeping under my door. I found myself checking my feed more frequently, drawn to the images like a moth to a flame, terrified yet unable to look away. It was a sickening cycle, feeding my fears with every scroll. Then the ads began to change. They infiltrated every aspect of my life. I saw them in subway stations, flickering on the screens above the tracks. I found them plastered on billboards, their grotesque imagery staring down at me from all angles. They showed people just like me, their skin rotting, faces twisted in horror, and I felt my reality slipping away. In the middle of the night, I would wake in a cold sweat, certain that the walls of my apartment were closing in. I started avoiding mirrors, afraid to see what I had become. My friends noticed my absence and began to worry. They texted, called, but I could barely muster the energy to respond. "Are you okay, Nat?" Sarah asked, her tone heavy with concern during one of our infrequent conversations. "You've been quiet. You know you can talk to me about anything." "Just tired," I lied, my voice shaky. I didn't want her to know the truth, didn't want to admit how deeply the ads had burrowed into my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see those images, hear the whispers that echoed in my head. "You're decaying." I could feel it happening, but the world around me continued as if I were invisible, caught in a nightmare that no one else could see. The breaking point came when I discovered that the ads weren't just confined to the digital realm. One evening, as I walked home from the store, I glanced at a newspaper rack outside a deli. There it was, a full-page ad, my worst nightmare splashed across the headlines. The headline read, "Rotting from Within, the Silent Epidemic." Below it, a gruesome image of a decayed body, its once human features twisted beyond recognition. I froze, terror gripping my chest. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet, and I stumbled backward, my heart racing. How was this happening? This wasn't just coincidence anymore. This was a targeted assault. That night, I locked myself inside my apartment, unable to escape the feeling of being watched. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think. The walls pulsed around me, and I could swear I heard whispers coming from the shadows. "You're falling apart, Natalie," they hissed. "You can't escape." It was then that I knew. I needed to find out who was behind this madness. I needed to fight back before it consumed me entirely. I spent hours researching online, trying to connect the dots. The more I delved into the world of digital advertising, the more I realized I was in way over my head. The ads weren't random. They were the product of a group that thrived on fear, manipulating unsuspecting individuals like me. I stumbled across a forum filled with others who had experienced similar horrors. They shared stories of digital cults that targeted individuals through personalized ads, exploiting their vulnerabilities and driving them to the brink of insanity. "We're all in this together," one poster wrote, their words heavy with desperation. "We have to find the source. They want us to suffer." My heart raced as I absorbed the information. I wasn't alone in this fight, but the thought of confronting my fears terrified me. With no other options, I ventured out to confront my demons. I had heard whispers of a forgotten church on the outskirts of the city, a place rumored to be a hub for the cult. It was said that the building held the key to breaking the cycle of fear that had ensnared so many. As I approached the crumbling structure, the air grew thick with tension. The church loomed before me, its stained glass windows shattered, the front door ajar as if beckoning me inside. I hesitated, the whispers in my mind growing louder, drowning out my rational thoughts. Once inside, I was met with an eerie silence. Dust coated every surface, and the faint flicker of candlelight illuminated the pews, which seemed disturbed as if someone had been sitting there recently. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing through the hollow space. My heart raced as I felt the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on me. A shiver ran down my spine as I ventured further into the church, the air thick with decay and desperation. I could almost feel the presence of those who had come before me, drawn by the same horrors I faced. It was in that moment, surrounded by the relics of the past, that I realized the cult wasn't just manipulating ads. They were manipulating fear itself, our collective fear of illness, decay, and death. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, and I turned to find myself face to face with a group of cloaked figures. Their faces obscured, they stood silently, a sense of dread enveloping me as they began to chant. I felt a primal fear surge through me as the whispers intensified. "You're falling apart. You belong to us." The walls of the church seemed to pulse with their words, the very structure alive with dark energy. In that moment, I knew I had to fight back. I wouldn't let them take me. I wouldn't become another victim. Gathering every ounce of courage, I shouted, "You don't control me. I refuse to let you in." The cloaked figures paused, their chants faltering, and I seized the opportunity to confront the horrors that had plagued me for so long. I took a step forward, demanding answers, demanding to know why they had chosen me. As I pushed deeper, I began to see glimpses of my own memories, twisted and warped, mingling with the horrors they had created. I saw myself, frail and sickly, lying in a hospital bed, the fear of sickness consuming me. But now, standing against the shadowy figures, I realized that I was more than just a victim. I was the architect of my own fear. But before I could fully grasp this revelation, the shadows surged forward, overwhelming me. Their whispers morphed into a cacophony, drowning out my thoughts. I could feel their icy grip around my heart, squeezing tighter, blurring the lines between my fears and reality. In that moment, I understood that the ads were more than just manipulation. They were a reflection of my own insecurities. The truth hit me like a tidal wave. The cult fed on my fears because I allowed it. I had been so consumed by my anxieties that I had unwittingly given them power over me. As the shadows tightened their hold, I struggled against the overwhelming darkness, fighting to reclaim my own mind. "I won't let you win," I screamed, but the words felt hollow in the face of their onslaught. With one final desperate breath, I attempted to push back against the terror, to assert my existence against the shadows. But it was too late. I felt myself being consumed by the very fears I had fought so hard to escape. The church began to crumble around me, the walls collapsing in a shower of dust and despair. The shadows enveloped me, dragging me into a void where reality and nightmare intertwined, leaving only the echo of my screams. And I don't know how long I've been trapped in this digital purgatory, haunted by the specters of my own creation. The ads still flicker on my screen, grotesque and unyielding, but now they have become my only company. I am a prisoner of my fears, a shadow wandering through the endless void of the internet. I used to think that I was just a victim of circumstance, that I could escape the horrors that plagued me. But now I understand the truth. I am the horror, an echo of despair in a world that thrives on fear. I am nothing more than a whisper in the feed, waiting for someone to discover the darkness that lies beneath. Thank you for joining us in today's chilling tale. We hope you enjoyed the dark journey into the unknown. If you liked what you experienced, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, sometimes the whispers in the dark are more than just echoes. Good night.